in practice since 1981 when I graduated in general pediatrics from a residency. And pediatrics was a great field because it looks to the future. You do a lot of health promotion. You have the opportunity to educate parents. You have the opportunity to analyze behavior for the kids that can't speak. And you have the opportunity to really participate in people's lives across the lifespan, really, which is really unique, I think, to pediatrics.
Sure.
After 3 years of general pediatrics, I went and did a fellowship, which in those days was only 2 years, in neurodevelopmental disabilities. And as part of that training, I did follow-up and also evaluation of neonates in the NICU. And that really has always been my first love. And I think the melding of developmental and neonatology has really provided wonderful support to families and babies, and has really changed how neonatology has been practiced. The family-centered care movement really started in pediatrics in the NICU. The NICU was probably 10 to 20 years ahead of the pediatric ICU. So I feel that neonatology and developmental really working together have really promoted that change.
Can you talk a little bit about how you got into medicine, if you were possibly inspired by a woman to enter the field?
I read the biography of Elizabeth Blackwell in junior high, and she was the first American woman to graduate from a U.S. medical school. And that sort of inspired me. She went on to found a medical school for women in the U.S., a medical school for women in Britain, and lots of free family clinics. So she was really on the forefront, and her story really inspired me. And since junior high, that's the only thing I wanted to do.
What do you think it means to be a woman in healthcare today?
I think to be a woman in healthcare, when I started, when there were very few women, I felt it was a weighty responsibility to prove that women could be serious and could do anything that the men in medicine could. So at that time, I saw it as a big responsibility. Now that medical culture has changed so much, it's a little bit easier. I think both women and men in medicine have changed. And I think that has given the opportunity for, again, merging of two things into something better.
What are some of the challenges of being a woman in your specialty or just healthcare in general?
Well, my particular specialty, fortunately, didn't have call and didn't have really long shifts. So in the day that I started, that was very unique. And that did allow me to be home every evening for dinner with the family, which was very, very important. The specialties that have long shift work, the 12-hour shifts that many ICU physicians, many nurses do, are really, really much more challenging. So I feel that I was very fortunate and that I didn't have that challenge. Other challenges are being seen as somebody with credibility. And I think being able to build your credibility with the powers in medicine, which mostly are still men, is a challenge to be taken seriously, to be passionate without being overly emotional. And I think that balance of being evidence-based and also passionate without being taken lightly is a challenge for women as they communicate in this field.
What are some of the positives that come from being a woman in medicine?
Well, in medicine, just being in medicine gives you the opportunity to share people's lives, which changes you. And then you can bring that to all other aspects of your life. It is an opportunity that is not found in many other professions that I wouldn't trade for anything in the world.
What advice do you have for women who may be applying to medical school right now or entering the field for the first time?
What I would say, and it would be something I would say to my younger self, is that take your days off, take downtime, have fun, remember the other things outside of medicine. Don't save up your days, take them when they come. The other thing is that there is a quote that I was reminded of from Howard Thurman, and it says, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and then go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive." And by that, I mean, you have to feel alive in medicine so that you don't get used up. And if you are in medicine or in medical school and it doesn't feed you, then it won't go well for you or the people you meet. And the other thing is that you need to have some type of spiritual support, whatever name that is. Because if you don't have that grounding and that source of sustenance through some kind of spiritual connection, again, it will be very hard.
How do you think women physicians can best support fellow women physicians?
By being a mentor, by encouraging, by always pointing out when someone has done something, by giving credit where it's due, by sharing rather than saying, "I've made it, you make it," by really helping, which, that's something women have always done throughout history. We've always been helpers and caregivers. So in my mind, helping other women, being in medicine is really part of what being a woman is.
And is there anything else you'd like to add or touch on that I may have failed to ask?
One of the things that we mentioned very briefly was the culture change in medicine. And I know across our entire culture, things are changing rapidly. But in medicine, at least since I've been privileged to be in medicine, the changes are unbelievable. And I think that the challenge to all of us in medicine is to be able to keep up and to stay on the forefront and to have the best that we have to offer. And that it may look different, and that the people coming for whom it looks different shouldn't be faced with those of us who it didn't look that way with our criticism. So I think that, again, helping other people, whether they're on one side of the bed or the other, is really important. And the other thing that we didn't really address is teamwork. None of us do it alone, nobody. And if they think they do, I think they're misguided and misinformed. That if we look, and I could, list more fingers and toes people that have supported me and helped me. And I think that remembering that we are not in this alone and to use the help that's there.